So we've identified the target audience, but we also need to identify the associated communication challenge for this audience. Communication challenge is defined as the behavior and mindset that you're trying to change in your target consumer. It captures the levers that the brand manager has to tingle in the consumer's psyche such that the business achieves its business objective. To frame a communication challenge, you first need to establish what the existing mindset and behavior of the consumer is with respect to your brand. You then capture the desired mindset and behavior of the consumer. And finally, you summarize the communication task in one line, which is the one thing I want to convince my target consumer of is. Now, to clarify, this is not the entire communication challenge framework because there are also triggers and barriers that are captured in this, but for our purposes, this is sufficient to get a good idea of what the communication challenge really does. The way you frame your communication challenge tells a lot about the level of your understanding of your user as well as your expertise as a marketer. For example, for the Amazon's Or the Cow campaign, you could frame the communication challenge as follows. However, if Amazon had actually framed their communication challenge in this way, there might have been a little bit of trouble and they might not have gotten the Or the Cow campaign out of their brief. Consider the context here. Amazon is a clear number 2 in the market at the start of 2015. The biggest competitor, Flipkart, is much bigger than them. And while Amazon has decided to drive category penetration and speak to new users who have never used any e-commerce before, new users tend to play extremely safe and they tend to coalesce around a number 1 brand, which means Amazon might run the ads, but the benefit might actually come to Flipkart if they're not careful. The way number 2 brand can speak to non-category users and bring them to its fold and not go to the number 1 brand is if they have a powerful differentiator that they're able to convince the users of that this particular differentiator is essential to the user's experience. Not good to have, but absolutely essential to the user's experience. Because if the users start to believe that this particular differentiator is essential to their experience, then they're not going to care so much about whether the brand that they're going to choose is number 2 or number 5 or number 10, because it's essential to their experience. The communication challenge for Amazon is it needs to convince users that it has 2 crore options on their platform. But a potential user might come back and say, well, you say you have 2 crore products, but the number 1 brand doesn't really need to claim that. Maybe all those extra products that you have are fake and not really necessary. And in any case, I was used to using a few thousand SKUs, a few thousand products from my Kirana shop. So why do I need 2 crore products? Flipkart might do just as well for me. But if I don't really frame the situation in that context, if I frame it as saying that, look, choice is an essential part of a delightful shopping experience, that's something that a potential user can agree to and say, yes, if I'm a user who doesn't like to settle or compromise in life, then the statement that was just made absolutely agrees with me. And then when the brand follows that up with saying, look, that's why you should choose Amazon because it has the widest repository of 2 crore products on its platform, now suddenly starts to make a lot more sense. A final caveat when you're framing the challenge. Just like the business objective, it helps to be singular when you're defining the communication challenge as well. Being able to change one thing in your consumer psyche is a big enough task already. Don't make your life impossible by putting in further objectives and making the whole thing unwieldy and unlikely to work. So there you go. We started this model by first identifying what is the particular business objective that a campaign is trying to go for. Penetration, frequency, or average weight of consumption. We then followed up by understanding who exactly the viewer or the target audience is and what is the associated communication challenge that the brand is trying to solve for. These 2 are the first 2 elements of 7 elements that go into reverse marketing a campaign fully.